for the benefit of people who are listening after this has been recorded, and obviously they might not have the visuals, you can always access the live demo visuals from the video. So if you're listening on the audio, we'll try our best to describe what we're doing for your benefit, but it would probably be better if you really wanted to see what we're doing here to have a look at the highlight video on our YouTube channel. So everyone, welcome. This is our first ever virtual community workshop, and I am very excited to be here hosting that for you as your new community manager. And for those of you who don't know, this is Oleg. Oleg, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, thank you. I'm Oleg. I've been with N8N for over a year now, working on the front end mainly, but for the past few weeks and months, I've been focusing on this AI LangChain integration, learning more about LangChain myself, so it's been a cool journey.
Yeah, I may not have been with the company for very long, but I have definitely learned quite a lot in that period of time. I think my ability to absorb so much information has been pushed to its limits. Yeah, there is quite a lot to learn, and I'm inspired by every step of the way. And I know Oleg and the team have been doing some impressive stuff. And specifically, the most impressive thing that has come out recently is AI LangChain. So let's get into having a little bit of discussion about that. For those of you who don't know what AI LangChain is, what N8N has done is create a series of features and workflow nodes that can make this more accessible to you. Most people will probably be familiar what AI is, but more specifically, you have AI chatbots and AI sources that can actually process information for you and use it interpret it in a way that's usable. But Oleg, would you like to kind of dive a little deeper into what we have been working on here at N8N?
Yeah, so we heard voices from the community about integrating the LangChain that people are, and we've seen people using LangChain a lot to build AI applications. And because we saw that it would integrate so well with all the data streams and options that you have with N8N, with how you can work with your data, get your data into N8N, process it, and then pass it into these AI workflows. We started building this sets of nodes and generally the features around it to be able to create these AI workflows. Yeah, so you can, there's several ways for you to get data in N8N. So I mentioned we have Slack, email, from getting it from webhook or just requesting it from somewhere. And then you can wrap it all up, pass it to the agent or chain and do some decisions on top of it.
And I know from playing with it myself, I know many of the people here watching and listening, they've been involved in the alpha, and the feedback that you've been providing us has been brilliant. It's really helped shape the direction that we've gone with everything. But I know from experimenting myself, full disclosure, my coding and programming capability and my technical knowledge isn't high end, but it doesn't need to be with this. From what I've seen, I can get to grips with this very easily, and I can see the full potential of what I can use AI LangChain for, and specifically these nodes. And I mentioned just before here, I'm working on a database with my own information, my own data that I've made on vegetables of all things. And I found that being able to just sync that in, or giving an AI and a language model access to that, is really beneficial. Like having total control or more control over the data that's available to the AI LangChain has really shaped and improved my workflows. And I think there's a lot of massive potential when it comes to having your own personal data, isn't there?
There, 100%. It's super interesting how you can use these language models as sort of a backend and let it make decisions like in your app that you would otherwise have to program for. So like you don't have to handle every single use case. You can just give the language model an input, and it will be able to figure out based on your prompt what you want it to do, and give you output that makes sense for it. Yeah, this is definitely where your data plays a role. It also decreases the amount of hallucinations this model makes. If you give it some data and you ask it to only work on top of that data, or to only provide you answer on top of that data, not a good aspect. And you mentioned that you can start very quickly, and
yes,
we're going to see it in a bit, I think, where you can literally go into the templates, click on a template, provide your credentials, and that's it. You have a chatbot that you can connect your other tools.
Exactly. And it's funny you mentioned the templates. For those of you who haven't had the time to read over what we're planning for the workshop today. After we've had this little chat, we're going to go straight into the live demos. Then we'll have a QA session. And then later on, just before the end, we have a special announcement that involves the templates. So I'm personally really excited. I don't think anybody would want to miss that. I promise you, you really don't want to miss that. But the templates from a complete novice or an intermediate, those are really beneficial as a good starting point specifically when it comes to AI LangChain. I think we've created a number of AI LangChain specific templates for people to just start, edit, or integrate it into an existing workflow, and they're brilliant starting points regardless of whether it's AI LangChain or anything. I've seen a few of them come from the community as well. I've seen quite a few use cases from the community that have been so inspirational that for sure we have 100% said, that's great. Not only is that person using it in the way that we intended, everybody should have access to the way that they're using it. It's perfect. So templates have definitely come from you guys in the community. I think one of the other things that it's really hard to talk about it without showing everybody straight away. I'll probably pick up on it when we actually go through the demo. But one of the things that I know there's been a lot of hype around is not only can you make like the most common one is the chatbot. You can get it to process data and reformat it, and it slots so well into existing workflows. So theoretically, if you had something that you had running spent ages running something, or you created a workflow on this multi-level workflow that you might want to help miss a few steps or use AI to jump a few steps, it does help. You can slot it in and you can adapt existing workflows quite easily from what I've seen. I know that you've had a few that you've been tinkering, haven't you?
Oh, yeah. And as you said, you could easily integrate this AI into those workflows, but you can also use those workflows in your agent and sort of create yourself this little assistant of whatever workflows you already have with an AI, and then giving it option to be called from this agent.
It's really accessible too in terms of the amount of integrations we already had at NAN. That's now just been almost given superpowers almost of how enhanced the collaborative energy or the collaborative effort between these two different nodes really has. Like, I've seen some of the stuff that people have been doing with the Slack. I've seen some of the stuff that they've been doing with their internal bots, and again, really hard to talk about it without showing you the nodes, but I think I'm just eager to show you the demo. It is a little bit too impressive to just talk about. I think maybe because I know how many workflows we've got on how many demos we have, and specifically because I know you have questions as well. Maybe we should just kick off with the workflow demos now, Oleg. And what would be your first one?
I'm ready. So we're going to create 3 workflows today. One of them is going to be sort of a main workflow, which will have an agent that will be communicating with via chat. It's going to have a memory. And then we're going to create 2 workflows to give this agent some tools, so some things that it can do except for answering the questions. Yeah, let's get right into it, because as you said, it might take some time. I'm here on the new template, but that's actually not where I'm going to start. I'm going to go into templates and click on the advanced AI. As you mentioned, there's a bunch of templates that you can use for whatever use case you might have to start building for your workflow. But I'm specifically interested in the Slack chatbot powered by AI. Click on the use workflow. And it gives me these nodes already set up. It gives me the stickies that explain what these nodes do. I just need to set up the credentials. So let me do that now. First one is the chat OpenAI. What I've done, I've opened the chat OpenAI, which is the language model node that connects to an agent. And I'm going to set up the credentials first. So I'll set the OpenAI credentials. I select my model, which is GPT 3.5 Turbo 16K in this case. And I'll just leave the default sampling temperature for now. I also need to set up the webhook to listen for the Slack messages. And what I've already done is I've set up the credentials in Slack. So when you're setting up a new webhook in Slack, you would have to go through the setting up step where you basically respond to a webhook challenge. You respond back with a challenge. It's very simple to do, but I just do not lose time now. So I've already done that. So and you see that I have...
Just to say, at the top there, you see there's a docs. If you're unfamiliar with NA10, every step of the way, if you're ever confused about anything, for example, how to set up your credentials, you can click on the docs at any point in any node,
Yep.
and it will be able to guide you. I know our internal document creator, Deborah, has done a very thorough and excellent job of really being able to make this accessible to everybody, regardless of your code ability. So,
100%.
little tidbit.
Yeah. So to explain what I'm doing here in the webhook, we're just waiting on this address for a call, and that call is going to come from Slack. So my path is guilfoyle minus webhook, because that's the name of the bot that I'm using for testing, and this is the URL. If you're not familiar with N8N, you have two URLs in the webhook node. You have test URL, which you would use when you're debugging your workflow. So you would click on the listen for test event. Now you can see that it's the webhook test URL that is getting used. Let's fire an event to that. Oh, right, it wouldn't get the get event because it's only set for post events here. But trust me, it works. We'll see it in a bit. So this is the test URL. And then once you set your workflow to active here, your app or the Slack would have to use the production URL that you can see here. But let's stay with the test URL because that's what we have set up. So we have the webhook ready. We can test that it's actually doing something by sending a message to guilfoyle here. Where did it go? All right. We go, hello. And you see that the execution or the listening stopped. We got an output here, and we got the data about the message. Some headers, and this is the body, which contains the message inside the event. See here, text, hello. And it contains a bunch of other information that we're going to use throughout the workflow to build this Slack bot. Next step is we filtered out the non-user messages because the Slack would fire a webhook request also for your bot. So we have to make sure that we don't process these messages because we only care about what user says to the agent. We don't want it to talk back to itself. Then we have our agent. It's a bit spicy. So we tell it that it's a guilfoyle from Silicon Valley TV show. Amplify your bluntness and cynicism, tolerating zero incompetence. You can
Giving it a nice
it's a bit passive aggressive.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's always a useful tool to be able to set the attitude of your
100%. And it shows you the capabilities of these models, like what they can do. That they can act as other impersonate things.
Just before we go on, just want to kind of highlight that this is the first time from what I've seen, we've had a node that you feed into that node specifically. Like, for example, everything is usually square nodes, where this particular AI agent, you can feed different things into it to make it essentially more effective. Well, I'll let you continue, but I wanted to just highlight it's completely different to what you've seen before, and there's a reason for it.
You're right. So these connections that are coming here from the bottom, and these are what we call configuration nodes. So they provide some functionality to like this root node. So we see that this root node agent is utilizing model. That one is required. So we connected chat OpenAI. And with a conversational agent, you can only use chat models. So you see that when I click here on the model, I click on the plus connection. Here there are only chat models.
Which makes sense.
Because it's
agent.
Because you're going to be
exactly.
Nice, yeah. Then we have a memory, which is not required. So your agent would run completely fine without it, but it just wouldn't be able to remember things. And we'll go into the setup of the memory in a bit. We have some tools that we give to the agent that it can use. Here we have Wiki and SERP API. We won't be needing that, so we'll just keep Wiki for now. And finally, there's an out parser that allows you to provide it as either parse it in list or provide it with a schema or JSON schema to what you expect your JSON output to be of this node. But this is fine for now. Let's check how the memory is set up, because that's an important aspect to how this Slack bot is going to work. So if I open the memory, this is the configuration for it. And we can click here on mapping. So we have two modes in the input. We have mapping and debugging. Debugging would show you the current execution input to this node, while with mapping, you can map execution data from the previous nodes, sort of, from the parent of your root node. So we check the webhook node, and we are going to set a session key. So how memory, we're using window buffer memory, which stores your conversation based on the session key that you provided. The session key includes the workflow ID, and it includes whatever you write here. So we want this agent to be able to remember our user. So we're going to key it, the session, based on the user ID. Or we could also use the thread ID if we just wanted to have a memory within a thread, or we can do combinations of any of those or any other attributes. But let's use user for now. So we see that the Slack response, this is the webhook here, it gives us the user, which is what we're going to use. So let me just get rid of this to make it empty. You see here that I click to expression to be able to write the expressions, and I'll just drag it from the left panel user to here. We get undefined because we haven't executed it yet, but it's going to be there. We also configure here the window, context window length, which is how many messages in history it's going to store or it's going to remember. So that's done.
Just to stay on that a little bit, just to clarify that for those of you who might not necessarily be fully aware of what we're going through. So essentially the memory is giving the agent the ability to recall what was previously said or previously discussed based on how many messages you determine. If you didn't connect the memory, it wouldn't, for example, if you asked what is my name and then you asked, hey, again, what is my name, it wouldn't remember. Or if you can do it without memory, but as well, if it's not exactly, I wouldn't do it, but as well as that, you don't have to use Windows buffer memory. You can attach any. We have a number of options, so it doesn't have to be Windows buffer memory. But also, if you do have Windows buffer memory, it does mean that if the server restarts, everything it won't remember. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, so that's memory setup. We also have Wikipedia. We give it Wikipedia as one of the tools that it can use for now. In a bit, we're going to add more tools, but let's just keep Wikipedia for now for testing. And then we have a Slack node that is going to respond to the message. So let's see how that is set up. Again, I need to set up my credential. And here we can see that it's getting the user. We need to fill in which user is going to send the message to. So we do it by selecting send user by ID. Here again, we need to provide it the ID, which we can drag, same as in the previous step. So that would be this thing. Drag it in. We got it. And we want to give it a message. So the message would be the output of an agent. And that's it. We just basically change the credentials to set it up for our Slack credentials, and now it should work. If we go execute workflow, that will start the webhook test listener. So now I should be ready to say hello. And you see that it triggered the event and it provided the response here.
Very polite.
Now let's all right, well, this is important to test. So now if I would say something again, nothing would happen because that webhook is not listening anymore, because in the test mode, like when you click on the execute workflow and you don't have it active, it's only listen once, then it's going to terminate the listener. So you would have to click on the execute workflow again to get any response. Okay, so that seems to be working.
I think as well, it'd be important now to show the debug information from the AI, so that because I think that's something that's really cool that we've implemented here. That having the ability to see the AI debugging is incredible.
That's a good reminder to show you the AI debugging. So I've opened this agent node, and here it has two tabs. It has an output, which is what we are sending to the Slack to send back to the user. So here we're using a JSON output. And you see that these are now green, so you are able to see what exactly they resolved to. So here we have our message and the user ID. And in the agent, we also have logs. So when I click on logs, you can see you can see logs for this configuration node and what were their input and output. So it starts with the window buffer memory, where we inserted new message, hello, how are you? So that was the initial message. And we see there's no output, so there's no messages in that memory. And that was passed to the chat OpenAI, so to the language model. Here we can see again the input. Here's the system prompt that it gives to explain the agent what it is and what it can do. Here at the bottom, you see the user's input, hello, how are you? And this is a simplified view, so we are doing some parsing on that output to show you this view, but you can also see it as a raw JSON of what exactly is happening. So this would be the object that we get. Yeah.
You can view the log as well. So theoretically, if you wanted to test whether your setup is correct, you could temporarily add a manual chat directly in the canvas.
100%. Let's do that quickly. But for that, we'll have to disconnect the Slack node or just disable it for now because it won't know where to set Slack messages to. Let's add the chat manual chat trigger is what it's called. I connected to my agent. The only thing is that I will have to change the text. So let me just do that, copy it from here, and remove it. So I'll just change the expression to use the JSON.input for the text because that's what the chat is going to send. Now that I have a chat connected, I also need to change the window memory session key because we no longer have this data as we're going to be doing debugging.
Have I just derailed you? I'm so sorry.
It's all fine. I'll just copy it. It'll be super quick. And now we can open the chat. So we say hello, how are you? And it executed the workflow. Oops, here it's waiting for the webhook. So we have to disable the webhook. Hello. And yeah, here's the response again, and you can see the same log, but just for this specific response. You see that the user input here is just a single message again, because I changed the session key, so it doesn't have access anymore to that same memory. And this is a quick way how you can debug your workflows. But let me remove that for
I think that's really useful. As we mentioned before, we can just insert it into an existing workflow. That's a really useful manual chat trigger is really useful in those instances. I know specifically on my workflows, probably on everybody else's too, but it's saved me a lot of time. So
I've restored back the session key for the Slack user. I'm going to enable this. And so now we have the agent responding to our Slack messages. Well, let's actually confirm that because we just did some changes to make sure we won't get delayed later. Do you have any question that you would like to get answered from Wikipedia?
From Wikipedia?
Yes.
How old is the King of the Netherlands?
Now, can somebody from the chat answer it quicker than our agent? Yeah, because it just failed, so that's unfair. Oh, I didn't change the input.
Oh, of course.
Okay.
So it should work now.
It's starting now. There you go. Here's your answer. So it still works, which is great. But let's give it some more tools that it can use to help us to be more useful. The first one we're going to do. Yeah, there's some question.
I was going to say that just this setup alone, it has so much potential for a number of businesses that I've been speaking with. For example, it has the capacity to think about your support internally, not just externally. So not just customers. You can connect your own data and your customers as standard. We're all familiar with AI chatbots for customers and companies. But think about internally. If you have a Slack chatbot, just like you've set up, and you have it connected to a knowledge database, the amount of time that internal users are going to save trying to find the answer to questions. Just think about production plans for the entire year. Save people having to dig through that data and find out the answer to has X and Y done this part of the development cycle. You could ask, theoretically, the chatbot if you had it connected to that data. It's going to save so much time.
Yeah. Also, what I think is interesting, but it's probably auto-discovered for this, or for sure it is, but you can also do training now with on top of your data, and you can train these chat models. And that's also something that N8N would integrate super well with, because you can just fetch your data wherever they are coming from, be it Slack messages that you want to train. You process it somehow, and you fire a request to OpenAI with your training, your modified training data, and you can maybe even use some chain to expand that data, because you might only have like a small set of that data, and you want to increase it by using GPT-4 on it to expand that data set. So all of this is possible and super accessible. But yeah, shall we continue with the?
Oh yeah, for sure. I was going to say, theoretically, you could have an agent, a Slack agent that will evolve with the development of the company. So stuff that you might have forgotten about ages ago, it will recall it for you. Yeah, it's great.
So let's give it one more tool, and the tool is going to be workflow tool here. And what workflow tool is, it allows you to call another workflow, and it allows you to provide this functionality to an agent. You explain to it how this workflow is used and what query it expects, and it decides at which point it should or should not be called. So I'm just going to name this summarize select thread, and we're going to say, call this tool to get a summary of specified select thread. If response contains done, it was summarized successfully. Right now, we don't have that workflow, so I leave it empty for now, but there's some information that we can already fill, and that is going to be, again, I switch to mapping here and go to webhook, and we are interested in channel. So we always have to pass the channel to summarize to an agent. And drop it from here. We set it to channel. And another important variable is the timestamp of our thread stamp. Not sure which one is it, but basically thread ts and thread ts.
I see a number of people.
Oh, right.
Just because I'm paying attention to the chat, see a number of people mentioning hallucinations. I think one of the things to point out here is that by providing your own data, you give it the potential to reduce the amount of hallucinations, because you're telling it what to look at specifically, and it has what you're looking for rather than generalizing and hoping for the best.
Yeah, and you're also asking it to provide you answer based on that context, and you can pull some guarding rails around that to really check if the data it provides is correct. So because you can chain multiple of these, be it agents or chain, it's very easy to control like what's the final information. But here, so I've set up these workflow values that we're going to pass to this tool. It's channel and it's this thread ID. You can see here that I've used thread underscore TS or JSON body event.ts. That is because, sorry, it's not JSON dot, it's body webhook item. Yeah, JSON. Okay.
And this is where whilst you're fixing this, just to elaborate a little bit more, the general nodes that have been produced for AI LangChain in general have three uses. You have, which we've just shown you, the chatbot or the chat agent, and then another one is LangChain itself, where you can provide it with a source of data and chain it and set a number of parameters to essentially do the job for you that you would normally take you ages to figure out, or ages to make multiple workflows on. And this is what we're trying to do now. So
we have that set up. We'll just change the name for this summarize select thread. And we can go ahead to start actually building this workflow. So open a new page, add workflow. And what it's going to do first, it's going to accept. So it's going to be called when executed or when called by another workflow. And we're going to expect these parameters that we set here. So we're going to expect them to be set, mainly channel and timestamp. So let's just mock them for now. Let's channel. So this is channel and this is timestamp.
This is where you're trying to remember what the channel name is. Oh, you've got it. Okay.
What happened? I misclicked them.
As always. Yeah, don't worry. I do that all the time.
Channel. Yes.
So essentially what you're setting up is whenever an action is performed in the other workflow, it will trigger the actions that we're now instructing it to do in this workflow.
So whenever that tool is called, this workflow will be called with the inputs for that tool. So we're just mocking for now. We got channel and the thread. So what we have to do is get all the messages from this thread, get all the conversation to summarize. We have to check that we have to filter out the messages so we don't include the bot messages in case there's already summary, and then we have to pass that to the chain to summarize that. Let's do that. And for that, we're actually going to need one more thing, and that is the bot user ID to know what to filter for. So we're going to do bot user, copy this expression here. And what we're looking for is authorization dot first 0. Let me copy it from here.
For those who are listening who can't see the screen, we're essentially setting up the next stage of the workflow. He's currently looking for the stack in the mapping to be able to put it directly into identifying what area of the information it's receiving that it needs to ignore.
I think that it's not here.
Isn't it Guilford? Isn't that his name?
No, but it has a number, so they don't give you names, unfortunately.
That would be useful.
It would be. Yeah, it's not bot user, it's JSON authorization user ID, right? So here, and that matches. Yeah. So this is our bot user. So we're also going to set that as mock here. And yeah, now we can start building. So as I said, well, the first step is that we need to get this conversation. So we use our Slack node, and we're interested in channel. We're interested in get a thread of messages posted to a channel because that's where it's going. There's where messages. Select our credential. We get channel replies. That's what we want. So now we have to select the channel. I click here by ID because that's what I know. And I drag it here. That's populated. Now it's asking me for message timestamp. This TS, which is what identifies the thread. I'll put it here. And return all, limit 50. We'll just leave it for 50 with 50, and we'll try executing it. And we got that message, which is great because that works. But there's nothing to summarize here, so we need to use different chat or a different message. Let's do that quickly. So we're just interested in listening for test event in the webhook, and I'm going to call it.
Now you have to think of more complicated. Have you prepped?
Yeah, I'll have this conversation about bread versus croissant. So
bread versus croissant.
Yes.
Wow, that sounds like.
And we're going to ask Ilfo to summarize this, please. And by the way, that this is one of the beauty of using these agents, I think, because you can just say something like "some thread, please," and it will know what to do. Like you don't have to program for a specific string to be included in your message. It would let that to the agents to figure it out. But anyway, we got this response here. I'm just going to pin it so I don't have to execute this test again from Slack, but I can just always have access to that data. And we're going to copy the channel here, and we're going to copy thread TS, which is this one. We're going to set it here in our mock. So thread TS is the channel. The bot user is still the same. Whoops. Jesus, I didn't save it.
Oh no. Cardinal sin. Not forgetting to save your workflow.
Save. Thank you very much. I have to execute it, so this data gets updated here in Slack.
I'm really interested.
And now we have 5 messages.
5 messages so you from that one thread.
Yeah, I've been pretty busy.
I was going to say
with myself.
You've been having a really in-depth debate about bread and croissants to yourself. Impressive.
You're not kidding. So yeah, those are the messages. Right now we're in schema view, so this is an example of one of those messages look like. So what we get is text, we get users, thread, and we also get blocks. Those we won't be using, so we'll just stick to text user. I think that's it. That's all what we need. You can also switch to table view if you want to like go over these messages or go over your data. But what we said is that we want to filter out all messages from Guilfoyle because let's add one more message and make sure that it's there. So yeah,
I'd be really interested to see what it comes up with. Is it going to be bread? Is it going to be croissant? As somebody living in Germany, I suspect it would be bread, but I don't know.
Oh, we tried to access the tool, which it doesn't have access to yet.
Because you haven't given it the workflow ID, correct?
Yes, yeah, exactly. So it's saying it sent the message, but it didn't send the message. Interesting. Oh, because yeah, we have it set up to send message to the user, but what we need to set up is send message to channel. From list.
And again, if at any point you are setting up these nodes and are unsure on why the errors are occurring, because again, NAN has been quite good in if your workflow fails, it will tell you where and where the issue is. And you can go to that node, you can click on the documents, and it will help troubleshoot with you by giving you a step-by-step on how it should be set up. So don't feel intimidated. I promise it's very much approachable and very intuitive when you get into it.
So what I've just done here is I set it to send message to channel by ID, dragged in my ID channel ID. The message text is still the same, and I've added an option to reply to a message, so it replies in that thread. I dragged the thread timestamp, and I didn't check in the reply to thread. So now we can execute it. Execute it. You see it went through, and the message is now sent. We didn't have to start the webhook again because now it already remembers the data from the previous execution. So now when I'm in the node and I click on the execute node, it's just going to execute that single node.
Yep.
So yeah, we have the response here. That's cool. Great. So now let's switch back to what were we doing? And that is setting up this summarization. So now if I execute this summarization Slack node again, we have 8 items because some of them are the new ones and some of them are the bot messages. Like for example, this one. So and we see this is we see an we see an ID here of the user who sent the message, and we see that it matches with our bot user. So we have to filter it out so it doesn't summarize its own messages. We can do that very quickly by using filter node. We add a condition here. That condition is going to be string, I believe, because that user ID is a string. And we'll set, or we say user of the message doesn't equal value. So that bot user that's coming from as an input here. And we run it. We see that it discarded one item, this one, which is the bot message, and it kept these other 7 messages. All right, so that gives us the messages that we're interested in. Now we just need to join all these messages into one object because right now there's 7 items. So if I would add a chain to summarize it, it would be run for each of these items. So we want to run just once. So we add it as we merge it using the item lists and connect items here, all item data into a single list. I execute that, and you see that the response is one object, which is called data, and that is an array of 7 items. Great. Now we can add our chain. So you're getting spacing and LangChain. And I'm going to insert my prompt here. So you are a summarization engine based on the messages below. Provide a short title, description, and concise summary. If context requires it, mention sender's ID. They will be later replaced with actual names. Provide your summary below. So here we are iterating over the messages. You see it's red, so we have to just fix that because now the data is in JSON data, and now we can map over it. So we're mapping over these messages and only including like the relevant information for the LM. It doesn't need to know about all the IDs of channel and so on. It's only interested about the sender and the message and the sender and the message. And this is what it's going to summarize. So that's done. We can execute it. We can't because we didn't connect the model.
I was going to say,
so
it hasn't got a brain yet. You need to give it its brain.
Now it does. So I've added the model. There's some configuration options that you can do. The defaults would be fine, but let's just set the sampling temperature to 0 so it doesn't make stuff up. If we expect if we expect long threads, would be also a good idea to use larger model with a larger context window. So 3.5 turbo 16K. Let's do that also. And now we can run the chain, see what we get.
There it is.
Okay, it responded with the summary. We can see how it happened. Well, here it's pretty simple because it's just a chain with an input and it sends it to LM, but this is the output. And you see that we asked it to provide pre-properties, title, description, and summary. And it provided it, but it's like in a free-form text. So now we would have to parse it. But what we can do is connect an output parser here. That would tell the LM what format we expect the input and what format or what structure it should output in. So structured output part. Here we need to provide this JSON schema of the output that we want. So let's say that we want title, which is a string, and we want summary, which is also a string, so pretty straightforward, and we want it wrapped in an object. Now disconnected. Let's execute it again, see how it changed. And now you see that we got an JSON response with title and summary. So we can already use it further in our app, and it's parsed as we want. If we take a look at the logs, you see that there's 2 additional steps. One step was getting the format instruction from the structure output parser node. So it would output the JSON that would be pasted into the LM to let it know how it should respond. You see here, here's the JSON schema instance you also have here too. And later in the backend, this JSON's the response from the LM is validated that it corresponds to the schema. If you want to be have even better control or better performance of this output parsing, what you can do is you can connect auto-fixing output parser. And this is a node that again accepts the output parser, but it also has a model connection to which you can connect a model. And now it would autocorrect itself. So if the message from the LM wouldn't adhere to this to the JSON schema that we are asking for it to output the data in, it would tell the LM, and it would be using this model, it would tell it to try to self-correct and providing an example of a good schema and ask it, because it would know where exactly it made the mistake, so it would try to correct it. But we don't need it for now. It was fine with our structure output parser. Any
Know
questions?
that
Or
the AI, I was going to say, it's good to know that you could not only use AI to answer its questions and sorts its questions, but it could fix its own questions based on us just giving it a few parameters. And I was going to say, for this, what you've just created, this has a lot of use case potential. I mean, I've seen people using stuff like this to scrape web data and scraping data and comprising it and having it fed into a thread that they can check on a daily basis. For me, for example, I can already see how I would use this to draw from many different points on a daily basis to be able to summarize things like news or summarize the weekly meeting notes that have happened across the entire week, or summarize data specifically for me to be able to put into a report on a weekly basis. Yeah. And the best thing as well, because of the workflows, you can even go one step further and tell it what to do with the data after it's done it all.
And what's also interesting is that it gives you another layer of prompting. So here we didn't set it, but we can also set a description to these fields, and we can say that in a summary written in a tone of drunken pirate, and it should adhere to that description now.
I want to see this. Let's see what it does. I want to learn from a pirate what's better, bread or a croissant.
Well, it failed terribly.
Wow. Okay.
Maybe that's a good thing. You don't want these in the world.
How well informed can a pirate be on a croissant?
Yeah, it's not paying that much attention to this summary, but it is able to figure out like the operation around the data very well. Like if you give it a summary. Mm-hmm. Well, that was a fail. Great. But if you really want the pirate summary, you can definitely include it here in this.
I already know people will not just do a pirate. I mean, I've already seen somebody post the chat question in chat: "Can you make a stream bot that takes and I already know that this means that we're probably going to get celebrity AI bots using stuff like this based on whatever we've told them to be."
Well, yeah, I'm happy for it.
I look forward to seeing what they come up with.
The last thing we need to do here, and we have it done, is outputting this data. So what the tool here expects, here this summarize select thread, it expects a single response object, or whatever you specify your response object as here. You see response. So we have to make sure that our workflow adheres to that. Yep. And we would do that by adding the set or edit fields, and we would add field response, and we would use expression again, say title here, new line, summary. Oh, I don't know why I put brackets here. Title and summary, or you're not to do the new line like this. And this was what we would output. Oh, and we have to say that only no input fields. So only to keep this response, we have title and we have summary somewhere here.
So you can even format it a lot to make it a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. Incredible.
And there's so many options that you can format it with. There's code note and whatnot, but this is the simplest way for now.
I know, kids, we're running out of time, and I want people to have the opportunity to ask questions. Did you have any other demos to show us, or just these two?
There's
more,
one,
right?
Yeah, there's one. Okay, I'm gonna run it through really quickly. So let's just set this workflow ID here. I mean, the chances of this working on the first try is practically zero. But
I have faith in you. I believe in you. I know you can do this.
Let's remove the Wikipedias to make sure it's always using this. Let's summarize select thread. That should be good to go. We execute it.
Here we go. We're gonna find out. Ultimately, is it bread? Is it croissant?
Oh, it got an output. That's promising, and it sent something. No way! It actually worked. What
was its final decision?
They're both below types of bread. Croissants are known for their complex texture, flavor, and.
Wow! So it's sat on the fence. Right. No definitive. Wow.
And it's very concise, the response, but you can definitely ask it to produce something more larger. But okay, so that's one tool. Another tool that we're going to connect, and it's could be a workflow on its own, is adding this data. But mainly, I already have it set up, so I'm just going to go through it quickly rather than adding these nodes individually. It's going to be quicker.
Exactly.
So what we have is here. So we have the following workflow, and it does two things. So first, it's inserting data into the vector store. So when I click execute, it's going to get all files in Docs. In a Google Docs folder. The folder name is frontend Oleg, and I've put some PDFs from our knowledge base in there, so I could ask questions on top of it. So I got the file IDs and I got the names. Next, I need to download these files to get it as in binary representation into the N8N. So we run this for each of those. I get an output here in a moment, okay, for items. So I got these files. What's cool is that you can view these files. You see that, yeah, they're legit. And now that I have them downloaded, I want to insert them into my Pinecone index. So I have Pinecone index set up called vector data. I'm going to use namespace frontend docs 1234 125. I'm always going to clear the namespace before inserting new data to make sure it's not there multiple times. I've connected the binary input loader, which takes care of parsing this data. So I tell it where the binary data resides, how it can access it, and I can tell it to split the pages of the PDFs. Maybe let's turn this off. Move here. All my data is PDF, so I don't have to decide if I want to use different loaders. But that would be the way to switch the loaders. Like if some of your data would be EPUB or text, you would write an expression that would check for the name if it contains the extension, or the MIME type if it contains an extension. Then you can select it or choose this programmatically, dynamically. So, but I know mines are PDFs and I don't want to split them
Yeah, exactly.
because they're pretty small files. So I also have a token splitter, which is going to split these files into chunks. Let's give it a bit larger so there's not as many of them. 3000, chunk overlap 0. And I have an embedding, so that's what these chunks are going to be. We're going to use OpenAI embeddings to convert these chunks into mathematical representation of the data. Then that's going to be put into the vector store that we're going to later search for. And that's all we need. So now if I execute it, see that this data is getting chunked. Here, it's getting embedded, and it's finally been set to the vector store. You see that here we have 4 items, but the output is 5 items, and that's because some of it got chunked. So some of it were over this chunk size limit, and it resulted in splitting docs. And here's the page contact. If you would be interested what's getting into there, you always have these logs, so you can inspect what exactly got chunked, and even the embeddings if you're into that. So now we have it in the vector store. So this is a tool, so it has execute workflow trigger. We're not going to use it for now, so let's disconnect it. Now we want to ask questions on top of that data, and that could be done using retrieval QA chain. All of these chains you can find here, advanced UI chains. There's some other nodes for the one for the vector store is this insert. We already have it here. So what's happening here is we've connected the vector store retriever. We tell it to retrieve 4 matching documents based on that embedding of the prompt of the query. So I'm going to ask how can I test workflow demo mode because it contains some of our questing guidelines, some of our testing guidelines, the data that we just uploaded. I have a chat model connected, and I have the Pinecone load node, which is using that index. Oh, it's not actually because I've changed the name. So good thing we noticed. Here I'm going to update the vector namespace to Pinecone namespace to frontend docs 125, which is the same what we just used. And now it should be ready to answer that question. So if I go execute, you see again that it's doing all this. It retrieved the data, passed it to the LM, and here's an response. And that makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
and here we can see in the logs. So this is again the input output, what it passed to LM. And we can now, so it tells you exactly in the markdown how to test demo workflows, which is something I have to look up all the time. And we also wrap it again and return it as a response to make sure it's available to use as a tool. But now I've connected it, I save it, and I'll just copy the workflow ID. Let's copy that. I also would create a new tool, so the workflow tool, but this one is going to be named Answer Knowledge Base Question. Call this tool to get an answer based on company knowledge base. The input should be concise question. And the workflow ID. I think the workflow ID is basically correct. Yeah, response. So that would give it access to the knowledge base. And now, hopefully, if we save this and we click on execute, we should be able to ask a Guilfoyle. That's the third one. So it was doing something. Okay, you see.
Nice.
Nice.
So it did exactly what you said.
Pretty much, yeah. And that's it for the Slack bot, pretty much.
So you've been able, just for using 3 different chained workflows, you've been able to create a Slack chat agent that uses custom data that you've defined for it. You've then been able to source another data point for it to be able to pull from, and then it will give you a summarized response based on the parameters you've set. And finally, hopefully I answered the question from the person who was asking about Pinecone. You've been able to use vectors to be able to enhance and narrow down that field of data that it can pull from even further. That's powerful. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I already see that people will utilize this far beyond anything we could ever imagine, and I cannot wait to see the content that's going to come from the community and the workflows that some of you are already coming up with. Just for the limited amount of exposure you've had through the alpha, the content you've been coming up is great. But more importantly, if there is something that you think is missing or should be enhanced, or you have any feedback that you think would help improve this even more, don't hesitate to let us know about it. You are in the Discord, you can post it here, you can post it on the forums, and we're listening. We're always there. I know already you can see Jan is lurking and John is lurking. There are quite a few of us lurking, paying attention to the feedback you have. So yeah, feel free to tinker with this and let us know if there's anything that you think we can improve or that's missing, and I know we'll jump all over that. But those demos were very, very informative. Thank you for letting us see them, Oleg, and I hope you're prepared for the next stage, which is answering everyone's questions. As you can all suspect, there are going to be a lot of questions, and a number of them have already been provided to us beforehand, so we've had a bit more time to actually go ahead and answer some of those questions for you beforehand. If we don't get round to answering your question today, don't fret. Leave your question regardless, and what we will do is we'll respond to them. No doubt Jan and John are already doing that, but we will get round to answering your questions either after the workshop today or when we find the right person internally who knows the answer to the question, who might not be available right now. But for now, I'm going to ask Oleg some of the questions that we've had submitted already. If you have a question and you want to ask Oleg directly, at the bottom of your screen, you will have a hand icon. Feel free to click it, and I'll invite one or two of you to come and ask us directly here. So first question that was submitted to us was how to upsert data with particular metadata. Is that something we can do?
So that's unfortunately not something you can do right now if you would use the vector store insert nodes that we have. But I've already started looking into this and look into the way how we can implement it into n8n, because it definitely seems like very handy feature to be able to annotate your data even further. Mm-hmm. So I think that will be coming very soon.
I know that, like I said earlier, with the feedback everyone's been giving, the sparks of inspiration that you guys are providing that really are helping direct the development where we're going to go with this. So this is a perfect example. Another example is your next question, which is, can you use AI voice translator bots? For example, can you send a voice in French and translate it into English?
Yeah, so that was a very interesting question. And I got a chance to create this very quick workflow to demonstrate how that could be done with embed translate voice. So you see, it's extremely simple. We use 11 Labs API to generate the French audio. So we give it some text that is in French. We execute this. Oh wow.
This is where you find out it doesn't work. Oh, we've got a bit of lag.
After APIs. Okay, now it gives you the data, which is the audio. What's cool again?
Wonderful.
You probably can't hear it, can you?
No, we can't hear it. But I'm imagining
but it's in French, trust
French.
me. Yeah. And well, you're going to see in a minute, because now I'm going to use Whisper API from OpenAI to transcribe that audio file, to convert it back to French. So we just did an API call for nothing pretty much because we converted text to audio and then we converted audio to text, but it still matches, which is great. And then we can pass it to a translate chain that looks something like this. It's very simple, translate to English, and we pass it the text. It's executed. The output is English. And then we send it to the 11 labs again to now convert to now create an English audio. So this would be one way you could implement this. Your audio can come from whatever place you want or whatever place we support or has webhook support. So it could be Telegram, it could be WhatsApp, email, it could be in, I don't know, YouTube video transcript, whatever. So here we have an output and now it's in English.
Incredible.
Yeah, so
I wish I could hear it, but
demonstration.
I'm taking your word for it. It's just the way Discord takes our audio. Can only have one input source. But that in itself, I think, will be utilized tremendously as a template. I mean, no doubt someone will create something like this and it will become a template. Just there's a lot of potential for using that for many different things. For example, I would use it in the Discord to allow people to be able to talk to one another in Discord from different languages rather than having a requirement to speak in individual chats or individual channels. So just off the top of my head, I can see how beneficial that had.
I think Home Assistant is a great example of usage of this. Something I plan to do eventually because you can have these small ESP boards that connect to Wi-Fi. They just need to basically accept the audio and output audio, and all your brains could be just a workflow that talks to the OpenAI and generates audio. And could be a very powerful use case.
Are you ready for your next question?
Yes, please.
The next question that came up was: will there be any separate branch, or will we intend to integrate this with the core NAN Docker file?
So eventually, once it's out of beta, we're going to integrate it back into the NAN. So it would come with the standard NAN release. Yeah, the package is probably going to be moved out of that repository. So it would live in its own repository, but it would be integrated in the main NAN.
And just to clarify on that point as well, if you actually need to find out more information specifically about what Docker image you should be using right now to be able to access this, we have a website. I think it was nan.io/LangChain.
Exactly. So here.
All of the information that you could possibly need to know about how you can connect to this, how you can get onto it, is available here. It's very important that you brought up the Docker image situation, because I know that right now you need to use a specific one.
Yeah, it's called AI Beta, I believe. So that's one way to run it if you want to run it locally or self-hosted for sure. But we also have a cloud version. So if you go from here, you go get started, you will be able to create an NA10 instance on Beta that has this LangChain integration. So you could also run it on cloud if you don't want to host it yourself. This would be a great way. And it's also much simpler to set up credentials on cloud because you can just click on set up credentials. Let me show it in Slack quickly because I think that's super cool. But if I go here, click new credentials, you see OAuth 2. I just click connect my account. And because we're using NA10 domain, everything is already set up, so it just matters of clicking 2 buttons. But yeah. So LangChain page is there available.
Yeah, 100% think if there's anything that you've been left confused about, or you want to get involved right now, head over to that website and it will give you everything you need to know in order to get up and running now. If you aren't already, I'm assuming quite a few of you already are. Next question, let me just find the right one. Where was it? I've gone a little bit too far. Are there going to be any tutorials on custom tool subnodes? And I think what they may be referring to is the workflow/code tool.
So there's already some information about how to use that node in the template. So that will be a good place to start. There's also docs. Let me open that template. So I'm not sure which one is meant here, the code tool or the LangChain code node, because those are two separate. So one of them allows you to connect JavaScript function and use it as a tool. So here you can see that we're selecting colors, and so this will be a tool to select the color, and that's one example. But another one, much more powerful example, is the custom LangChain code node. I have to open it from here. Oh, right, yeah. This one is not available on cloud, so that's self-hosted only. So I'll be able to show it now because you're executing arbitrary JavaScript. So